Good evening, everybody. I am Mary Jo Budges, and I'm really excited to have you here experiencing our Schoology for Parents webinar. Thanks for joining us on a Monday evening. We hope that you're going to find this to be really beneficial. I really want to start by saying thank you to our amazing parents who have been giving us feedback along the way this year. And one of the pieces that we asked for feedback after curriculum night is what additional questions or thoughts or things are still kind of rolling around in your brain that you'd like more emphasis around. And Schoology overwhelmingly came up as the thing that parents wanted to learn more about, which is fabulous. So that is the essence of our work tonight, is to really bring parents into this LMS, this place where students and teachers spend so much of their time around assignments and feedback and grading. So we are very excited to have you. I want to start by just recognizing the wonderful colleagues that are here tonight. Myself, Erin Miller, and Katie Gallagher are all on the call. Erin is acting as a guest as well, just to make sure that the experience that everybody is having is clear and makes good sense from the user end. Kat Kushak is our instructional technology coach, and she has really been the backbone of putting this presentation together. So I'm really pleased to have Kat on the call. Jessica Warnick, Jordan Balhorn, and Whitney Swope are phenomenal teachers at Islander and all are very experienced with Schoology and utilize it every day with students. So they'll be giving parents tips and tricks on how to understand and come alongside their students and utilize Schoology. So you kind of see an overview of the evening, and on this slide, I'm going to turn it over to Kat, who is going to kind of be the navigator for the beginning of our time together. But thank you very much for being here.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Mary Jo. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming. As Mary Jo said, I am the instructional technology coach at IMS. And so Schoology is very much a domain that I spend a lot of time in. So I'm excited to sort of share it with all of you tonight and hopefully give you the tools and some strategies and tips for making the most of your parent Schoology account, but then also talking about ways that you can support your students at home and their use of Schoology, most importantly. But what we're going to cover tonight is a lot of stuff. And so before we jump into anything, I did want to call attention to a few things, a couple housekeeping items. As viewers of this webinar, you'll notice that there are captions. The webinar is also being recorded. And at the end of tonight, we will send out the recording as well as ways that you can take the captions or the transcript and translate them if that is something that you are looking for. In addition to that, at the bottom right of your screen, it also actually might be more central on your screen, you'll see the ability to open up a Q&A. It may be, at least on my end, it looks like a triangle, a square, and a circle. That's called an activity within Google Meet. And if you open that up, you should be able to access the Q&A. We have the Q&A open to anyone. So as you are viewing tonight, if something comes up that you're wondering about, any questions you have, anything you'd like some more clarity around, please drop that in the Q&A. And if we have time at the end of our presentation, we will be looking for the questions in the Q&A that have sort of risen to the top or ones that we feel would be really good to address live. And then at the end of the webinar, we will go back to the questions in the Q&A and follow up with all families with sort of an FAQ sheet, making sure or making every attempt possible to address all of those questions. So the Q&A is there for you to view. So please feel free to do that. It will help us really cater to what our needs are. So the overview for tonight is it's going to start with just a very broad scope explanation of what Schoology is. Then we're actually going to jump into a parent account so you can see it and hopefully understand how to navigate it and access it. Then we're going to hear from our incredible team of teachers on some very specific ways that they use Schoology, that students use Schoology, and ways that you can support your student in using Schoology. And then, as I said, if there is time, we will field some questions and hopefully answer those. Okay, so moving on. What is Schoology? Schoology really is everything. It's the classroom, the school building turned digital. It's where your student spends the bulk of their time on their iPad is in Schoology or using Schoology to access something. It's their toolkit of classwork and resources. It has instructions, rubrics, all of the directions for assignments. It has the assignments themselves. It is also a sort of message center between teachers and students. It's a way for your student to stay in contact with their teacher. They can directly message them. They can also go to Schoology to look for announcements, or a lot of teachers use it for their daily, this is what we covered today. So it's a place they can go to see what they may have missed if they were gone. It is also a calendar and a planner. It will show you, as well as your student, the assignments that are coming up, the units that are coming up, any missing work they may have. Even events can come up on Schoology, school events, spirit days, things like that. And then finally, for all of the work that is in Schoology, there may also be feedback and grades. A lot of our teachers use Schoology as a way to dive into the feedback loop to help students really see where they are in their learning and where they can, focus their attention to improve in all of their various skills. Getting into the parent account side of Schoology, I wanted to be super clear on what a parent account can actually do. Your parent account is not the same as a student account for obvious reasons, but I also wanted to assuage any concerns about privacy or anything like that, because your parent account is really a view-only account of your students' contributions and participation within Schoology. So you're able to view your students' courses, assignments, the news feed. You're able to view your students' submissions to assignments, even their discussion posts. If a teacher has a Schoology discussion going on, you can view feedback and grades. What you cannot do is act on behalf of your student. So you cannot actually submit assignments or comment on discussions. You also cannot view any work from other students in the class. You can't even see the member list that students can see. They can see who their, classmates are. As a parent within a parent account, you can only really see the stuff that is related to your student. Okay, that gets us to sort of the main event tonight, which is actually looking at a parent account and talking about how you can get in and what you will see and ways that you can really leverage it to its full potential. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to that. All right, so the first thing that we want to touch on is accessing your parent Schoology account. And to do that, you will go to app.schoology.com. This is different than how students and staff members access Schoology. We have a domain-specific URL for MISD, but as a parent, you are accessing it through the app.schoology.com. You can also access Schoology through a mobile app, the mobile app on an iPad or any tablet, any smartphone, and it would be the same login that you'll use here. If you have never logged into Schoology before and you do not know your login credentials, you're going to go ahead and click the Forgot Your Password link and enter in the email that you have set up within Cumulative or Skyward. It will then email you all of your account information. So you'll go ahead and in order to access this, it's app.schoology.com, app.schoology.com. It's also the first one that comes up if you just Google Schoology, which makes it a little bit more challenging for students because they're looking for misd.schoology.com. But for parents, you're going to go to app.schoology.com. I'm going to go ahead and log in now. And you'll see that when we first jump in, this is really our main landing page. And actually, I'm a little bit further in than what you may see. So I'm going to go back out. There we go. This is what you will likely see when you first log in. But what's nice is it kind of remembers where you last left off. So if you only have one student in the district within Schoology, it should always take you to their landing page. But for your parent account, you will actually start in your own account, which can be kind of confusing because there's not a lot in our parent accounts. We're not in courses. We are likely not in any groups. As you can see, it's pretty empty. But what you will see is if there are any IMS-wide posts. So any school posts that usually they have to do with testing or just big announcements for the whole school, they will show up here. But this really is not super useful. A lot of the time you're not going to be in your parent account. Where you're going to want to go is actually up at the top right, underneath your name. When you drop down, this is where you'll see any and all of your students. If you have more than one, they should be here. And if you're logging in and you don't see any students, that would be something that you would want to reach out to our IMS techs and ask them what's going on. And hopefully we can fix it for you because they should automatically appear. Even if you have a student at IMS and a student at the high school, they should both appear here. And so if Katie, do you mind putting in the ims.techs@Mercer Island Schools email? That is our tech ticketing system. So if you are logging in to Schoology and you're not seeing what you're supposed to be seeing, feel free to reach out to ims.techs and we can help you out. But this is where you would jump between your students. So I'm going to go in and look at my student, Toothy, and how he's doing in his courses. And so this is the really the sort of the navigation, the control, the command center, that's the word I was searching for, if you will, for Schoology and really viewing how your student is doing. So as you can see, when I first get in, I have all the recent activity here, as well as the news feed that Toothy is seeing. So Toothy, my child, is enrolled in these 3 courses, and therefore I can see any updates as I scroll down from those teachers, or if it's a school-wide update, I could see those. I could also see any groups. Toothy's not in any groups. Your students will be. They'll be in a grade level group, a library group, and potentially any clubs or non-academic activities that they're involved in. They will be in that group, and the groups will also appear here in the news feed whenever there's an announcement. The recent activity will also show you here when your student has recently submitted an item or if that item has been recently graded. So you can see here the very first thing is saying that Toothy Gator received a level 4, and if I hover over, it well, it's not doing that now, but I could click on it if I wanted more information, and we will be doing that in just a moment. Over here on the right is where you'll also see the lists of different assignments and grades as they are reported. The first thing you'll see is the overdue list. Anything you find in overdue is going to be an assignment that has passed its due date without your student having made a submission. So if it shows up here, it's because a submission has not been made and it should have been made. So if I hover over it, it'll tell me that this was due on Friday, September 6th, which is quite old. And so that is a very old assignment. I would probably, talk to my student, Toothy, about if that's still something that he can do, has he talked to his teacher, having those kinds of conversations about these overdue things. And I can expand it here to see all of them. I can also see what's coming up. So I see that, due today at midnight, we have several things right here. And so if I wanted to go into the details of those, I could click on them and it would show me the assignment instructions, directions, any materials that are connected to that, any links, any rubrics. I can see exactly what my student would be seeing in terms of the assignment there. And then scrolling down, I can also see the recently completed and graded work, which is nice because I can just kind of see sort of the most recent things and how Toothy is doing on those. If you hover over, it'll give you a little bit more information about the ones that have not received a grade mark like L4, or this one received 5 points. So you can see those here. And again, these are all activities, assignments, assessments that I can click on to see more information. Another way to view a sort of, big picture view of what is going on with your student is the calendar view here at the top. This calendar view is going to give you really an agenda-like feel for what's going on, what's due, what your student is working on. So here's today. I can kind of see from these courses, this is what has been posted for Toothy. And again, if I scroll over, I can see that this is in science, this is in social studies, and this is also in social studies. And again, these are things I could click on to dig into more. Before we really dig into grades though, and to get back to that home page, I can click on this right here, the IMS, and I'm brought right back to this view. And I did see a question, and I'm trying not to jump into those too much, but I did see one that's really easy to answer. Everything that you're seeing on the parent view, the student also sees. So Toothy is able to see the overdue, the upcoming, the calendar, the notifications, all of this. There's not really anything, I don't think there's anything that as a parent you see in your account that your student can't also see. So they're also seeing all of this. Okay, so the one more thing I did want to show is in your parent, this is where it's a little bit tricky. Remember how we had our sort of parent Kushak, that's my parent account, view of things. And if I click over, this really doesn't do much for me. If I went to my settings here, it would only be to control the settings for the courses or the groups that I, the parent, would be enrolled in, which isn't really anything. I mean, if there potentially was a PTA group, which we don't have, I think that's housed somewhere else, that could be here, but otherwise we don't really have anything for parents to be enrolled in. So this isn't really, like, all of this stuff is for you specifically. But where your settings can be really helpful is within each of your students' views. You can go in, and if I go down to settings, now that I'm already viewing Toothy, if I go into settings, this is where I can look at things like what page I land on when I first open up Schoology. And also one thing that I really wanted to draw your attention to is the notifications. So this is something that not a lot of people, I think, are leveraging to its potential, but you have the option with your parent account for each of your students. You can have a parent email digest and or the overdue submissions email. So you can turn these on, and then you can even set the frequency at which you're receiving the digest. So a lot of people prefer it to come weekly rather than daily. Daily would be a lot, but you do you. And you can even choose the day and time of the week that you get that digest. And the weekly digest really just gives you a snapshot and an overview of the week and, you know, things that your student was assigned, things they submitted, any grades they received, and anything that they missed. The due date passed and they hadn't submitted anything. So all of that is going to come through in the weekly digest. Same with the overdue submissions email. If you don't really want to worry about getting a weekly digest and you're, you know, that's too much, what you can do is just have this on, so you'll only receive an email when something becomes overdue. So it's a little bit of a, you know, a red flag that you can turn on so that you can see when something hasn't been submitted, when the due date has passed. And then of course, save changes. And so that's one way to receive information so that you're not having to go into Schoology to catch everything that's happening. You can just get it sent right to you in a nice little weekly digest type of form. Okay, what we're going to jump into now is actually looking into some of the more specifics that you can see in Schoology if you're wanting to, you know, do a more of a deep dive into how your student is doing, the grades they're receiving, and even the feedback they may be receiving with those grades. So you have a couple ways that you can navigate, and it will all kind of go to the same place. Like if I click on these links for these assignments, they're going to jump me into the course that has assigned that thing. But if I want to start at a, you know, higher up view, I can click on grades along the top, and I have two options for my student. I can look at their grade report, which is going to be the thing that we're most familiar with. It'll look more like a standard traditional grade book. And this is going to give us, for all of their courses, you'll see, you know, all of your students' current courses here. It will give you the, you know, all of the assignments that have been graded, you know, the weights and any feedback, any exemption codes, all of that stuff here. So if I click on language arts, I can expand or collapse any of these sections. I can see, you know, the different categories of grades. I can expand science, and I'm seeing, you know, the course grade here at the bottom, right? The overall course grade, same with social studies. And we're seeing an L because that's the level of proficiency that Toothy is currently earning. So we're seeing that Toothy is doing pretty well. You know, for this point in the trimester, I'm really pleased with how my child is doing in their progress towards mastering these different subjects. I can expand them, like I said, to look a little bit more closely. And you'll notice that in this view, I'm seeing the assignment. And again, it's hyperlinked. So if I want to see specifically what that assignment is, I can click and it'll open up. I'm also seeing the scores that Toothy received on the assignments. I'm also seeing here, there's this orange circle that indicates that it's missing, and Schoology even tells me, hey, missing. And anything you see as missing has specifically been marked by the teacher as missing. So even if your student receives something in their overdue report, it may or may not be marked as missing by the teacher. If something's marked as missing, though, that's like an added level of the teacher has gone in and said, hey, this thing is missing, and I really need you to work on it. It will also show up in overdue, but just think of it this way. The overdue happens automatically. If the due date for the material or assignment has passed and no submission has been made by the student, it will show up in overdue. The missing mark is an added level of the teacher going in and actually putting in a missing code. So that's just one thing to be mindful of. You'll also see the scores down here, and depending on how the teacher has assessed different materials, you might see an L2, which is level 2. You might also see a numeric like 5 out of 8, 2 out of 4. That is, if you're seeing something like a 2.5 out of 4, it's an L 2.5. It's the same thing. It's just how the teacher has set it up based on their own calculations. And again, level is their level of proficiency towards that skill. And we can click on these to see, well, what is the skill? For example, this L2 in A Sound of Thunder was a common lit assignment. I can see that here. This is something that's actually outside of Schoology, but right here up at the top, I can click on the score received, and it's telling me, oh, I am not sharing. Oh, it opened up in a new tab. Sorry about that. There it is. I clicked on the assignment. It opened it up in a new tab. That's why you didn't see that. But from here, I was able to see, oh, this is a common lit assignment, A Sound of Thunder, but all the way over to the right is the score with the rubric, and this is reading comprehension. So I'm able to see, oh, okay, so Toothy received a level 2 for reading comprehension on this activity. This is one of those ones that doesn't live within Schoology because it's an external tool, Common Lit. So I would probably sit down with Toothy and say, hey, show me your Common Lit Sound of Thunder assessment. I want to, see how you did. I see that you received a 2. Tell me more about that. But a lot of the materials do actually live within Schoology. So for the ones that have a little paper icon next to them, that means that the student made a submission to Schoology that was assessed. So like they turned something in digitally. And a lot of those things are viewable. You'll also see this is where I can read if there's any feedback or comments that the teacher has made. That's where I will see them. So, I'm seeing that my student is doing really well. They're, getting all this really great feedback right here. And again, I can click on these to see them depending on what they are. Oh, here's one that's topic sentence. Very cool. I can see that the assignment was submitted here. And if I open it up, ooh, very cool. I can see this poster that Toothy made. And
Kat, we're not seeing what you're seeing.
I did the same thing. Thank you, Mary Jo.
Yep.
Same thing. When you click on a link, it is sending me to a new tab that I don't currently have shared. But I opened up, this is what I clicked on. It was the time travel flyer. And as an example of what you could click on right here, I can see that this is my student's submission. Up here at the top is the score, the comment. If I click on it, I can actually see my student's submission. So a lot of the work that your student will get in Schoology and a lot of their grades, you will actually be able to see their work. If you're unable to see the work, some of our, a lot of, the work students do is outside of Schoology. And actually that's something that we'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation, because the work that is there's a variety of assignments that you'll see in here. But this is a way to sort of view just a sort of a way to see in one spot a lot of the grades if you're not seeing them in cumulative, which is another thing we'll touch on a little bit later. But scrolling down, again, same thing. I can expand to see all of these various grades, any indicators like missing. And of course, if you see something in Schoology that you have questions about the specific score or why something has been scored the way it has, that's another conversation to have with your students and potentially the teacher for that course if you're curious about anything specific. Like this in science, you're getting a really interesting, the way that the raw points are being shown here, and these do get converted, which is explained right here, which is very cool. And then again, same thing, social studies, I can go down, I can expand any of these, I can click to see if it's an assignment. I remember to do it this time. this assignment I can see here. This one is actually I want to say this is a Google Drive assignment. So Google is another one that is integrated within Schoology, but it is still considered an external tool. And therefore, it's not one that I can see directly in Schoology. I would have to ask Toothy to show me their Bacon's Rebellion and the First Amendment assignment. But I know that Toothy did it because I saw the score attached to it right here. So you're just getting a lot of information from the grade report within Schoology. The second place that you can go if you are looking just at the grade book view and you're thinking, okay, this is great. I can see assignment by assignment, how my student is doing, and specifically, what they're turning in, what they're not turning in. But if you're wanting to see more skill-based, how your student is doing in terms of the standards and their progress towards mastering those standards, a lot of our courses, not all of them, but a lot of our courses use what's called mastery. And if you go up to grades, instead of clicking on grade report, if you do click on mastery, some classes you'll see show up. So language arts and social studies here. If I click on language arts, it's working now. Okay. You'll see that it is now organized by the essential standards, and it's showing me based on the amount of submissions where Toothy is in their progress. And I can expand this. So if I wanted to look at reading comprehension specifically, and I can see based on these submissions, and again, these are things I can open up and look at, this is how Toothy is doing. One word of caution with mastery is that it's not necessarily going to be what you see reflected in the gradebook, because mastery it just does flat calculations. It averages everything together. It's not weighing anything based on necessarily what a teacher might be wanting to have be more valuable in the gradebook based on, the amount of time that a student spent on something or the amount of evidence that there has been in a trimester for a certain skill. Mastery is just going to show you based on all of the evidence, even practice opportunities, which we don't necessarily want to be counting in cumulative or in the Schoology gradebook. Mastery is going to show everything. So you might see like a level 2 in mastery, but a level 3 in the gradebook based on how teachers have set stuff up. But mastery is still a very cool view to see a story of how your student is doing when they submit pretty much everything, right? Every practice piece, every assessment. If you're wanting to view the full story, this is a neat place to go as well. But like I said, not every teacher is using mastery because of the way that it, just puts everything in. And they really do use the grade report more if they're not using cumulative to report back grades. Okay, so I know that was a lot of information that I threw out there. I'm hoping that you've been able to add into the Q&A if you are still wondering about something. But what I'm going to do now is pivot back to our presentation. And we're now going to jump into some of the more specific how Schoology is used within our actual classes, how students use it, how they engage in it, what they're expected to be able to do in Schoology, and how you can support them in doing those things.
So I'm Jessica Warnick. I teach 6th grade tech block and also 8th grade science. So I figured I'd tell you a little bit tonight, like from the student perspective, when they walk into class, what they see and what we expect them to be able to do daily. So I took some screenshots just to kind of show you what they would see up on the board. The first thing we expect students to do daily is come in and access whatever class materials we need for the day. So I screenshotted, like, this is for tech block class. They come in, they see their warm up. Oh, I'm doing whatever the CT number 1 is. And I indicate to them that they need to go to Schoology. But my expectation is they can go to Schoology, they can find that folder and open the assignment, no problem. The second thing we expect students to do daily would be to submit their assignments. There are a lot of different ways to submit assignments, but something like a Google Doc or a photo of a paper assignment, they should be able to do that pretty easily. The third thing that's really important is it's a great way for students to receive feedback and teachers to give feedback in an organized way, but just so they know to check progress and to check the teacher feedback as well. And Kat mentioned a little bit about the grades section, and parents can see that, and we encourage students to look at that also. So that's a lot for students to jump in and just be able to do, but we give them a lot of guidance and we walk them through along the way. So students are learning these skills bit by bit with a lot of built-in support. So in 6th grade, when they come in September, it's a lot. They're diving in, and teachers realize that, and we really slow down in the first at least month of school, if not longer. We introduce them to the basics. We walk them through. I give one-on-one help. I'll walk them through. I'll project my iPad and walk them through, showing them what buttons to click. You can also see the sample of the 6th grade warm up here. I was asking them to fill out a Google form, and for the 6th graders, I break it down into a lot more steps, screenshots of exactly what they should be clicking on. By second or third trimester, these 6th graders are so much more independent. And then 7th and 8th graders, they are independent on Schoology. They're like, tell me the assignment name and I'm going to go find it. So you can see the 7th and 8th grade warm-up example, right? Same as 6th grade, but now all I have to do is tell them the assignment name and they know where to get it. I will say some students come in after 6th grade and we don't just throw them in. They have a tailored Gator time, and in that Gator time, they get tailored support so that they can get that skill set for being proficient on Schoology as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jordan.
All right. Hi, everyone. So to talk a little bit about the types of Schoology assignments and submissions you might see or your students might see, there are really 2 types of assignments: embedded assignments and external assignments. And the embedded assignments are resources and tasks that students will work with within the Schoology app or website. That's where they will submit their work. And then external assignments are really apps that go beyond Schoology. So that might look like Google Drive, it might look like ClassKick, and I'll explain more of those apps in a second. But students will access those outside Schoology, and sometimes that often looks like paper. So going back to the basics a little bit. So some examples and screenshots that you can see here. Embedded assignments are really tests and quizzes. You can see the screenshot in the upper left is the Telltale Heart reading comprehension quiz. Students will be able to access the questions that they answered, incorrect answers, correct answers, and then Google Drive and Schoology assignments. Yes, it is somewhat of an external app as well, Google Drive, but if you're ever wanting to see what your students are working with in Google Docs or Google Slides, they have a document tab on their iPads in the app or on the Schoology website. Parent view, you can't necessarily see that, but your students should be able to walk you through that and show the doc that they're working on. Discussion posts are also available, and those are embedded in Schoology as well. Some pretty common external assignments that students work with: the ClassKick app and Edpuzzle. ClassKick has a variety of features that students work with, but again, that is not through Schoology. So you might see in the grades tab a ClassKick assignment that was graded, and students will need to go to that app and walk you through that assignment to see any feedback or work that they completed. So for the story of learning, each teacher has a unique method for monitoring student progress. For example, in social studies, you will see in the grade tab categories like practice, as well as our units and standards that we work with. And these categories really show the story and progress of student learning throughout the year or the trimester. Practice assignments are kind of those stepping stones before something is assessed. And then the assignments living under the unit category show and reflect a student's proficiency with a skill. Feedback also lives in the grade tab on Schoology, but again, teachers are kind of different either on Schoology or in cumulative, but you can see comments on assignments. And with any sort of external apps like ClassKick, usually on Schoology, I tend to put a comment that says check feedback on ClassKick, and your student can walk you through signing into the ClassKick app and showing you the work that they completed and any feedback that they received on that particular assignment.
Great. So I'm going to talk about how to support your student in helping them feel really like, first of all, they're the experts. And so right now you've gotten so much information and you might be thinking like, there's no way I'm going to become an expert in this. But I just want to encourage you that you don't have to be an expert because your kid is. They are spending hours a day in this site. And so they know it so incredibly well. So Kat and the other teachers did an amazing job showing you how you can kind of drive from the parent side. And that is definitely an option and a great one to access to have a bird's eye view on your kids' learning. But I also want to just give you some tips for how you can let your kid be the one doing the driving of that as well, in addition to the parent view. So something that I want to encourage you is to say, hey, pull out your iPad. And will you pull up Schoology for me? And I'm going to teach you a couple of helpful clicks. Like if you just know 2 clicks and we really simplify it and boil it all down, what are those clicks to know? So I was thinking about the after school conversations that I have with my kids. And as soon as I ask them the question, what did you do at school today? My kids are in elementary school, but they've got middle school vibes about it. They will say nothing or I don't remember. And rather than asking, what did you do at school today? You can say, hey, will you pull up Schoology for me? I'm so interested in hearing about your day today. And with Schoology in front of them, they have their courses and their resources and all that hard work that they put in today. So what if you ask them, hey, will you pull up on Schoology something that you're proud of from today or from the last couple of days? And if they're like, oh, I don't know. Well, okay, click on a course. If you don't want to pick, I'll pick. Why don't we pick language arts class? I love language arts class. Then you're going to say, oh, tell me about this. And so if they're really not giving you much back, because you have this idea of, okay, we're going to click on courses, let's pick one, show me something exciting from social studies recently. Or you could ask them, show me something creative or challenging you're working on. We don't want to use the Schoology as it feels like, I know it can feel like as a parent, it's like a punishment of like, here's all the things and here are all the things that are missing, but maybe something that they're proud of or excited about that they've been working hard on, because I promise you it is nothing. That's just the tired response after a long day. And that's reasonable. And then we have all of these tools. So the other question I ask my kids is, what do you have for homework? But it's really easy for kids to say nothing. And you're just like, okay, cool. But if you build in the habit of saying, hey, let's talk about homework. Will you please pull up Schoology for me? There are 2 places that I can have you prompt them to look. So Kat mentioned the overdue portion. So that's going to be a really big clue for you. Now they might say, oh, I already turned that in. And then you can say, will you show me? Because right here it says that it's missing. Like, let's click on that. Oh, oops, there's no submission. Did you maybe forget to submit it? So this tool and have them click on it. You don't say, I found this in my parent view. It could be, that could work, but it also could be, you show me. And then you could maybe ask them, what is one thing that's on your overdue list that you could tackle tonight? Because if they have 20 overdue assignments, they're not going to tackle them all tonight. Maybe it's, hey, I noticed you have 10 missing in language arts class. Would you be able to write down that list and go chat with your teacher. Maybe they can help you prioritize. Maybe this one is most important and they want you to work on this. Sometimes I'll say to a student, I want you to focus on this assignment because it's the most important. And we're going to say, don't do these ones. And I can even go in and make those exempt so that they're not stressing about the overload. The other thing, that important view of the calendar, which Kat showed you as well. So you can see that big glance, but that, again, that's a lot of information. And so kind of asking them, looking at the overdue, and then you can kind of have a big picture glance at it as well. If you're feeling overwhelmed by the parent view, it has every single tool at your hands, but you also have your students, and letting them be the expert and drive these conversations can be just a really helpful trick for also having them really take the ownership over their grades and their learning, and be able to bring you into that as well.
What I did want to address, there were a couple questions in the chat around where to find grades, and like, are all grades in Schoology or all grades in Cumulative? And of course, the answer to that is no. What is a challenge is that our teachers, and as you can see, our students really spend a ton of time in Schoology and using Schoology as the stepping off point for accessing assignments or jumping into a Nearpod or a slides deck or whatever it is that they are working through together. And for many teachers, especially language arts, social studies, and science teachers, they are really living in those submissions in Schoology, grading on Schoology, giving feedback on Schoology. And so what we have found, especially as we were migrated last year to Cumulative, is that Schoology and Cumulative don't speak to one another very well at all. And so what our teachers were having to do is do all of that work in Schoology, transfer it then in and kind of do double, sometimes triple work, because some teachers were also moving that Schoology grade into a paper grade so that they had it for sure, as they were then having to recreate it, the story of learning in Cumulative. And it was really overwhelming and exhausting for many of our teachers. And so this year, we are really emphasizing the use of Schoology as a grade book throughout the trimester for many teachers, and in particular, science, social studies, and language arts teachers. For whatever reason, and it's interesting, as I was doing some research and thinking about this webinar, Cumulative works really well for math and for math brains. And our math teachers aren't living quite as much in Schoology as our language arts, social studies, and science teachers are. There's many more assignments that are paper pencil that translate specifically into Cumulative. So really, for parents, there are two places that you'll need to look. And we have put together a document that we will share out with families that says where you can find grades for your child. In the end, at the end of the trimester, every staff member will upload a final score into Cumulative. So Cumulative will, at the end of Try 1, end of Try 2, and end of Try 3, have a final standard grade for our students, or for your students. But the learning journey along the way for language arts, social studies, and science primarily lives in Schoology, and for math primarily lives in Cumulative. And so then we want to say thank you. It looks like we do have a little bit of time. Erin, I don't know if you want to draw our attention to some questions.
I saw a question here that I think would be great to answer. It was, what is the best way for our students to work with their teachers if they see a mistake in Schoology? For example, something that has already been submitted but is still marked incomplete. Teachers, what do you think?
Yeah, this will happen. We have so many students, and as much as we try to be perfect about it, the mistakes will come up, or a confusion will come up where they thought they submitted it but were sure that they hadn't, or that they had, but it's not in there. And so I highly encourage you to ask your kid to either send a message in Schoology, so they have an option to message all of their teachers, and they can send a message. Sometimes we talk about, like, what does it look like to send a polite message to your teacher? And they might say, hey, Miss Swope, it looks like this assignment is marked as missing. Can you help me figure that out? But I also love, especially with 8th graders, asking them to pop by in person, maybe a minute before school, and they can pull it up and have that conversation to clarify and figure it out. Because sometimes it might just be a misunderstanding on one part or the other, and getting that resolved.
Just to piggyback on what Whitney said, and this also answers another question about how can students message their teachers. Students do have a separate part of their Schoology that through your parent account you don't see, but students do have a message center within Schoology that they can use to directly message their teachers, and teachers will get that message on Schoology, but they'll also receive an email in their inbox that they've received a message on Schoology. So it's a really easy way to directly communicate with their teachers when they're at home and have a question about, something they're working on.
A lot of the questions I see are around technical things. We'll make sure to get that information out in following this webinar, but things like I'm associated with a different district, or I need my login, things like that. So we'll make sure we get that information out.
Yeah, and those are common issues. If you send an email to ims.techs@mercerallenschools.org and let us know, we can help you out with that, especially the reclaiming your account from a different district. That one's very common. And we are stuck until the other district does something, but we have an email that we can send and get that situated.
There was a really good question about assuming that students are receiving more directions on specific assignments beyond what we see in Schoology. And so teachers, could you maybe talk about the process of how an assignment gets laid out in a classroom for kids? Because that is accurate. Not everything that a teacher says or the dialogue that happens in the classroom shows up on Schoology. So I would love maybe some insight about how a parent could navigate through that confusion with their child.
I can speak a little bit on what we do in social studies. We actually have a on our materials page, our weekly folder that includes daily materials that students will access. So from the slides that we present to them in class to assignment documents or instructions that are linked but not showing up on the grades tab. So I would encourage you to check out the course page with your student and see how each of their teachers sets that up and what is published either weekly, daily for the unit.
Awesome. Thanks, Jordan. There's one more question that I think we could maybe, well, at least one more, but for the overdue assignments. So if a student submits something that has been marked or, shows as overdue, will it automatically clear that status, Kat, once the assignment has been submitted?
It will, yes. We've had issues in the past where it can sometimes take a little bit of time to refresh within the system. But yes, submitting to the assignment will cause it to be removed from overdue, which is great. And also sometimes students are so clever and have figured out ways to circumvent some of that by submitting blank documents, or just, like a chat or whatever. They'll just submit anything just to get it off of overdue. But, that's something teachers can work with students on.
Well, and the last question that is in the chat right now is for the high school. Is the tech access to text the same email?
It is not. So I also put that in the chat. It is high school or hs.tex@merceislandschools.org. So ours is ims.tex and theirs is hs.tex.
Well, and what is awesome is recognizing that this is a 6-12 system that our students will live in for 6th grade through 12th grade. So although it is complex and there are lots of there's lots of investment that is needed to become an expert support for our students in Schoology, it will pay off as kids will be navigating this for so many years in their schooling. And we just truly appreciate you guys jumping on tonight. We hope that this webinar was meaningful and met a lot of your expectations. Like Kat was saying, we are going to go through all of the questions. We'll make sure to that they've all been answered, and we'll follow up with the video recording, with a frequently asked questions document, with information about where to find your students' grades dependent on who their teacher is, so that there's not confusion about where you need to look. So we will be sure to do that. Thank you for taking time to fill out the reflection and feedback form. It will help us continue to think about how best to meet your needs. And we're just so appreciative of everyone's time tonight. Thank you so much.